there's been a lot of talk about this since the trade has been made, that the Leafs may have overpaid.
Mhm.
And I don't know. I don't know why there's such a debate about this. Like, I personally don't think they really overpaid. Like, what's your take on the whole, oh my God, they gave up 4 draft picks? Like, this is absurd.
I don't want to ever say, oh, I never really believe in the case of a team giving up too much, because at the end of the day, the team gives up whatever they're willing to give up for that player, and that's up to them in that moment. And on the other side, the other team has an ask. So if there's an ask, there's an ask, and that is based on what the buzz is of other teams have offered or what they've heard teams are willing to do. So I very rarely, especially the post cap era, have I looked at a deal and said, man, that team got hosed at the deadline. And we look at this deal. Okay. We look at this deal. Like I already talked about the first round pick, the first, second, and the fourth that belong to Toronto. I mentioned the numbers of the odds of getting an impact player with a first round pick. So the second and the fourth is obviously much worse, way worse. And these are players, again, that would help you in 4 or 5 years. And then the third, we got it from Ottawa for taking Murray. So, like, I would ask people this. I think this is the best way to put it. If you think the Leafs gave up too much, what would have been fair? What you're at least gonna
Question.
Yeah, you're at least gonna say a first and a second. Okay, so they gave up a fourth and a third that they got in another deal to get it done. Like, whatever. Right. So I guess that's how I see it. What do you think, Bruno?
Yeah, and I think Dubas actually explained this pretty well. After the trade, he said, listen, like, we like the prospects that we have. Talking about Matthew Nyes and Topi Niemela and some of the other recent draft picks. So he said, we want to stick with those guys that we have in the system. We've watched them play. We've watched them develop. We would rather give away, the mystery box is what he called it, of draft picks. Like, we don't know what these picks are going to turn into. And sure, you could uncover some gems in the late first round, second and third round, maybe even in the fourth round. But, I really don't think the Leafs gave up that much here. And sure, maybe they're a little bit depleted in terms of like the amount of draft picks that they have over the next like 3 or 4 years, but you can get some of those picks back.
Of course.
You can move down in the draft.
Yeah, people forget that.
You can trade guys for more picks. Like, it's not the end of the world here.
Exactly.
And let's tell it like it is here. Like, it's pretty much a do or die situation for Kyle Dubas. Now, I don't necessarily think it should be, and I know Lepore, you pretty much agree with me on that. Like, I think the Leafs should re-sign Kyle Dubas, even if they lose in the first round this year. And again, people might call us complete idiots for that. But for the most part, this guy's made good decisions. A lot more good decisions than bad decisions. And I don't think he gave up a lot here at all. He's getting an impact player like we talked about. I don't have to go over all the accolades again. And it's like you said, Lepore, like, what would have been the package you would have preferred that the Leafs give up? Just a first and a second? Oh, but because they added a third and a fourth round pick, like, it's, oh my God, they gave up way too much. Yeah. The whole farm system's depleted now. So I don't think that's the case at all. So I think we're both in agreement then that it was fine. It was totally fine what they gave up for Ryan O'Reilly.
In terms of measuring it, had they called and said, okay, nice for O'Reilly straight up, would you do it?
Probably not.
Yeah, I feel the same way, because everything that we just went over about the odds of it becoming an impact player and down the line, you could get fucked really quickly and look very bad with a deal like that if Matthew Nyes is a top 6 forward in 2 years or something. So yeah, that's what else were they going to give up? They held on to the prospects, and even with that, had someone told me after a deal like that, giving up Niemela or Nyes, that yeah, the Leafs gave up too much, I'd still say you have to give up something, and that's what they wanted. But at the same time, I'd more understand the take that they gave up too much, because like I said, you can have an egg on your face in a couple of years when giving away a player like that. Something that it's a known commodity, I guess is the way to put it.
We're going to get into if we think this puts the Leafs in the driver's seat in the Atlantic Division, if this puts them over the edge in terms of matching up against Tampa or Boston. We're going to get into that, so stay tuned for that. But Lepore, before we do, I want to ask you about a couple of things. First of all, has your opinion on the trade changed at all watching O'Reilly's first 2 games as a Leaf, and how surprised were you to see him start as the second line center and to see John Tavares bump to the wing?
Yeah, I was quite surprised in that, but I liked it. And as far as his play, I'm not going to say, oh my goodness, he blew my socks off, but he made an impact. You noticed him. That first chance he got in the first game on the first shift, please, again, it wouldn't have happened to the Leafs. It would have happened against the Leafs, but that just would have been amazing had he buried on that first shift, everyone going crazy. But no, I didn't really change my opinion because I think I got what I expected. And pleasant surprise to see him at center. I like it. And a lot of people had the take when Tavares was first snagged by the Leafs that he would eventually move to wing. So we'll see if that becomes sort of a staple with O'Reilly in the lineup. But I was happy when I heard about the deal. I was happy when I saw what they gave up or did not give up to get him. And watching him, what I expected. A guy that he cares. You could tell in 2 minutes. You mentioned the Foligno thing. I saw someone tweet, and I totally agree with it. He's already done more than Foligno. He's already shown in those whatever amount of shifts he's taken the first 2 games. No, this is a better ad than Foligno.
Yeah, no, that's totally fair. My opinion of the trade hasn't changed either because I think he gave exactly what I thought he was going to provide this team. And you said it, man. Like, imagine he scored on that first shift against Montreal. The building would have exploded. Leafs Nation would have exploded. That would have
been the haters would have come in.
Oh my God. That would have been the dream scenario. People would have been flooding the ice after that goal. Like, it would have been just bonkers at Scotiabank Arena. But he's looked good so far. He's had some quality chances. Even the Blackhawks game on Sunday night, when the game was already out of hand and they were down 5-3 after the empty netter, he had that backhand on that breakaway that hit the post. Like, he's had chances. He's looked good with Marner and Tavares. I was surprised, though, Lepore. I thought he was going to start as the third line center. Like, I thought Keefe was going to ease him in. And, a lot of people were thinking when the trade went down, like, the first thought that came to people's heads was, oh my God, like, their center depth is nuts because you got Matthews as the first line center, Tavares is the second line center, and then O'Reilly is the third line center. So people thought this is incredible. Like, this is the best center trio in the NHL. O'Reilly's going to start as the 3C. The depth is going to be incredible. But we've seen the first 2 games, the Leafs are like, screw it. We're putting him on the second line. We're loading up the top 6. We're going to take some pressure off John Tavares. And it remains to be seen if they're going to continue with that. I think they are going to experiment with O'Reilly on the third line. Okay. And I don't know who his wingers are going to end up being. I mean, take your pick at this point, whether it's Kerfoot, Engvall, who knows, right? Yarn Croak. But I think they are going to experiment with that. So that surprised me. I would say I was legitimately surprised. I thought they would ease him into the lineup instead of doing that. But I have liked what I've seen so far with him playing on the second line, even though they just lost to the Chicago Blackhawks as a massive favorite.
Yeah, and this deal couldn't have happened a couple of weeks ago for episode 90 because Ryan O'Reilly is the first player in history of the Maple Leafs to don the number. So
that's right. That would have.
Thanks, Ryan. Yeah.
Yeah, and Kyle. Thank you, Ryan and Kyle, for screwing over the GFP podcast.
Help us out. God.